So welcome everyone. This is our third session of our Beyond the Diagnosis conversation series. I'm really pleased that you've joined us today for what I anticipate will be a very meaningful conversation. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of lands on which we're joining from today. We pay our respects to elders past and present and extend that respect to any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people joining us today. My name's Bree, and I'm joining you today from the lands of the Murrumbidgee people on Yuin Nation. I do encourage you to share which lands you're joining from in the chat. So today we are talking about finding you again. And I do want to acknowledge up front that this topic can bring up a lot of emotions. So if this session resonates strongly with you or brings up some difficult feelings, we encourage you to reach out to your support network, your GP, or other healthcare professionals who can provide you with the support you need. Many of you have shared over the years in our groups that when it feels like your entire world revolves around your child, your own needs fall to the very bottom of the list. And as your role expands to fill gaps left by systems, taking on the job of advocate, therapy coordinator, NDIS expert, and so much more, it's incredibly easy to lose sight of who you are beyond being a parent to a child with a disability. So today's conversation is about redefining your role, recognizing how valuable you are to your child and acknowledging why you deserve to exist outside of survival mode. So I'm really excited to be joined by two wonderful speakers who bring both research expertise and lived experience to the discussion. So we have Helen Bourke-Taylor. Helen is an occupational therapist and a professor at Monash University who has dedicated her career to supporting families through programs like her Healthy Mothers, Healthy Families program. And we have Pam. So Pam brings the wisdom of lived experience as Christopher's mum and actually now works as a peer facilitator supporting other families while maintaining her own creative pursuits and friendships that bring her joy. So we're going to explore how to rediscover your identity outside of caregiving and why looking after yourself isn't a luxury. It's absolutely essential. So let's jump into it. We often hear parents talk about losing themselves in their caring role. And I'm going to go to you first, Helen. So from your perspective, what have you noticed as an OT and researcher?
Well, thanks, Bree, and thanks, Pam. I'm really excited to be here and welcome to everyone that's listening. So firstly, my lens is as an OT and, thinking back to being an OT, working with children, I know all the hats that parents wear and the diversity of the role of being a mother or a father and the caring tasks that go with it. So if we think about the roles that we have making up our identities, so you might be sister, mother, daughter, worker, all those sorts of roles. When you take on caregiving roles, it is so time intensive and so highly valuable to you that it takes up a lot of headspace and a lot of heart space. And so other roles can diminish, sometimes role of partner, paid worker. So we can decide that, look, this role caring for my child and my other children is so overarching that I'm actually going to need to relinquish some other roles because my identity now is that I value that the most. Now, some roles are low value, being the friend to the neighbour down the road you don't really like, maybe changing your work circumstance. But other roles can't be relinquished. And one of them is self-carer, like being able to maintain ourselves. And so I think that, all parents confront this whole, the interaction between caring for myself and then caring for others. And it can cause a mini explosion at some point in your life where you suddenly realize they need to coexist. We can't just have the caregiving role occupy all of my days. So the only other thing I want to say is, with we think about, say, motherhood or fatherhood, and we came into that life role with expectations because we had imagined ourselves to become that mother or father. We have experienced our own parent or watched our sister become a mother or whatever. And so we had some degree of predictability, but it isn't until we get into that role and we take on all the tasks that go with that role that we're living it and we feel it. So transitioning into a role takes, as I said, it takes time. it takes brain space, it takes heart space. But the caregiving role isn't necessarily a role that you could have planned for, that you imagined before. So it takes even more energy to master that role. And by mastery, I really mean get it to the point where you can feel confident and you feel competent looking after your child and your children. So I think parents need to give themselves a break. It takes a while to get used to that role. You do need other roles to coexist because you're a full person and your identity is lots of things. And so, yeah, I think just give yourself time, and it is a very dominating, very valuable life role, and you're a very important person in your family's life.
Yeah. I love how you just said like the brain space and the heart space. Like I feel like that just summed it up. As soon as you said that, I saw Pam nod in and I was like, oh,
Yeah,
you're
yeah,
right.
brain space and heart space. Tell yourself that. This
Yeah,
means a lot to me. This isn't
it does.
just,
Yeah,
learning how to do some medical procedure or, whatever. Your heart is in everything you're doing, and it takes more energy.
it
Yeah.
does.
Mm.
Absolutely. Pam, I'm going to come to you now. So through your personal experience with Christopher, can you describe what this identity shift looked like for you and maybe other parents?
Yeah, so Christopher's my first child. So in the beginning, it was all just kind of like thrown in and lumped in with motherhood, right? So like the whole experience of him being in NICU and then coming home and then having to get to those 64 appointments with specialists and therapists and interventions and genetic testing, whatever else it was that we were having to do when we got him home, that all kind of got lumped in with being a mum. And like Helen just beautifully said, the headspace and the heart space, it was really hard to reconcile it all because it was a lot early on. But I think there was like a period where I was able to differentiate a little bit and say, okay, so like I'm caring for him because I'm his mum, but at the same time, all of these extra things I'm doing over and above what a normal new mum's experience would be is part of being his carer. And I think becoming and growing into that role and becoming comfortable with calling myself a carer really helped me to kind of like settle into my identity and what it was now. It helped me see value in the way that I was contributing to the family because of Christopher's circumstances. Wasn't able to go back to work or do anything like that. He was my job essentially. So by accepting and growing into that role of a carer, I was able to, in a minute, sweetheart. Sorry, Maxie. I was able to like see the value in what I was contributing to the family, and I was able to recognize that just like everything else, sometimes I needed to step away from that so that I could continue doing it well.
I want my mac and cheese now.
I'll get you mac and cheese.
Yes.
I was going to come back to you, but do you want me to go to Helen?
Yeah, go to me.
We'll come back because I was going to ask Pam about that moment when she realized she needed to reclaim some aspect of herself, but we might come back to that question in a minute. But I might go to you then, Helen. So through your research with Healthy Mothers, Healthy Families, what have you learned about the expanded roles that parents of children with disabilities take on, and how do these roles impact their wellbeing? And I guess following on from that, how do we help parents understand what their role is and isn't?
Yeah, well, I think Pam was really helping us there articulate, actually it can be everything. We can self-sacrifice ourselves so that the caregiving role eclipses everything else. This is easy to do. And particularly for women, it's really easy to do that. So through Healthy Mothers, Healthy Families and investigating what we call the journey of mothers, because the journey is that sort of transitioning into all the things that I need to be and do to, meet the demands of mothering and caring for my child and my other children, and partners and everybody else. So, you know, initially it takes a lot of time to get used to this role. And when you're transitioning in, you're learning all the tasks and becoming an expert. And so you do have less time to sleep, less time for physical activity, less time to connect with the people that are supportive towards you. And, you know, I think accepting that that's the way it is for a little while is okay. You know, accepting that it's a short period, temporary situation. And for temporary, it can still be a couple of years. But in the longer term, we have to work out, how am I going to really project manage my role so that, like, if I, you know, because it is the big heart space and it is the big head space, but the more expert you become in that role, the more capable you become of project managing it as well, because things aren't so emotive for you. You know, things like helping your child to tolerate other carers and trusting other people to look after your child almost as well as you can, because we rarely find anyone that looks after our children as well as we do, because, you know, we're the parent. No one's going to love them the same, but they can be very competent and helpful. So I'm happy to pause there for a second, Brie. If we go back to Pam, sings the mac and cheese little incidents temporarily over.
Yeah, absolutely. Because Pam, I was going to ask you just around that personal journey with Christopher and that moment when you realized you actually needed to reclaim some aspect of yourself beyond that role of caring for him.
Yeah. So
it's like as soon as Pam talks, Max talks.
yes, you can eat the mac and cheese. Off you go. Sorry, guys. So Christopher's early years were pretty intense, but there was a really intense period from when he was about 3.5, 4 till he was about 6. His health and overall well-being was just absolute rubbish. He underwent 4 surgeries during that time, including instigating tube feeding and having a peg installed, and quite major hip surgery. He was averaging, over and above those surgeries, 6 to 8 hospital admissions each 6 months. So it was crazy intense. During that time, because we're absolutely nuts, we'd had Charlie just before he turned 3. And then just 6 weeks before he'd had major hip surgery, we had Matilda. Yes, you can have that water. No, it's water. Good boy. Sorry. So my body was depleted. My mental health was crap. I wasn't sleeping. Any food I was eating and nutrients I was consuming were going straight to Matilda because I was breastfeeding her. I was literally turning into a shell and was only just holding it together. And towards the end of that period, just before COVID, I think I hit rock bottom. And I realized, because I was ready to give up on my boy, which breaks my heart thinking back, but that I realized in that moment that I needed to start taking a more balanced approach to my life, because caring for Christopher was all consuming, but I also had 2 little girls that needed me, and I was trying to maintain a relationship with my husband, and like it was a lot. So in order to provide the best support for my family, and to continue providing Christopher with the care he deserved, I needed to start prioritizing myself and taking care of my own health and well-being first. It wasn't selfish, it was necessary. Because if I continued going down the path I was going, then I wasn't going to be good to anybody. So it was about 18 months after that kind of massive realization, I attended the Healthy Mothers, Healthy Family program, and that really truly is what empowered me to really embrace carving out time as non-negotiable every day for me. And it didn't just help me, it benefited my entire family. Yeah.
I'm sure that's music to Helen's ears to know that that program had such an impact on you.
Yeah,
Yes,
it was amazing. Is.
And well done, Pam. And I think that to me, that's all about your own empowerment. And we do hear from a lot of mothers that they do get to the point of feeling that this is the bottom point before they'll take that step towards finding time for themselves, protecting time for themselves, bringing others towards them so they've got more support. All those things that can feel impossible, they really can. And this is why we start with small steps. And I guess one of the great things about Healthy Mums being delivered through Belongside is parents are facilitating it, and they've been on that journey. So you learn from someone who's walked that walk, and I think that's really valuable to mothers. The other thing I really I want to say, Pam, is part of managing ourselves and our own time is also learning to manage others and what others put on us. And so I've been in Healthy Mums workshops, having led them for a long time myself, where I had a mum say, well, I went and fired the OT last week because they realised that the expectations there on them just weren't congruent with living a balanced life and looking after yourself. So there's certain high value things that you can't give up. You can't give up the care that your child requires. You can't give up the nighttime helping your child to roll over. You can't give up those things. But you can give up some other things, or you can delegate them to others. And that's really what I meant around the project management, is really like, what do I value and what's essential for me in my role and for my child? What am I not prepared to compromise on? And then what can I move and shift and bring someone else in to help a little bit, whoever that person is, paid or unpaid. And so that's the sort of self-management and management that we want to sort of aim for. And it takes a bit of time and it takes support. And the program like Healthy Mums is really trying to help mums to go in that direction.
Absolutely. Pam, you've accumulated expertise about Christopher's needs that no professional could match. How did you come to recognize and assert your role as the expert on your child, especially when navigating systems that might not always acknowledge this expertise? And what advice would you give to parents about how this role evolves as their child grows?
Okay, so Christopher is incredibly complex. He likes to keep everybody on their toes and challenge everyone and their expertise. So he has within his team, we've got a myriad of specialists, medical experts, doctors, therapists, and a whole bunch of other supports. And we learned quite early on that a lot of these specialists and surgeons and people that are like experts in particular fields don't like to look outside their own discipline. They like see him for whatever it is that we're there to see him for. And that doesn't work for us. Christopher's so complex that if we treat seizures without considering anything else that's going on for him, it will all just go haywire. He needs to be treated holistically, and all things need to be considered each time we're trying to work with something. So it's taken us a little while, but Tom and I like to think that one of our strengths is communication. So we've worked on our advocacy skills, and we've always tried to maintain open and clear communication with our entire team. Transparency, trying to have regular multidisciplinaries so that everyone is on the same page and can talk to each other rather than talking through us. But ultimately, Tom and I are really strong on making sure that his comfort and his overall quality of life is at the forefront of every decision that's made. So anytime there is an option given to us, we need to go home and we need to think about it and make sure that it's the best option for his overall comfort. It's the best option for his quality of life, but not just his quality of life, our family's quality of life. We're massive on family-centered approach from all specialties to ensure that whatever is being implemented into the house or into Christopher's treatment regime, it's not just going to work for him, but it's also going to work for our family. because he's a very valued part of that. And if it doesn't work for our family, it's not going to succeed for him. So that's like relevant, whether that's like the neurologist wanting to put something in, or the OT wanting to implement something, or a new piece of equipment, or whatever it is, it needs to work for our entire family. In terms of advice for others, trust your gut. You guys know your kids best. No one can tell you otherwise. If they're going to argue with you about it, you need to just like, I need time to think about this. If it doesn't feel right, speak up. Don't let them, like, this is your kid. Don't let them railroad you. You're allowed to say, no, I need time to think about this. You're allowed to do that. And you're allowed to say, I'm not sure that's going to work for us. What are our options? You don't have to take them at their word first go and go home and struggle through it for months if it's not going to work for you guys. So trust your gut. Trust that you know your kid best. And if they're trying to peddle something that's not necessarily going to work for your question, for your family, ask them questions, find out what your other options are, and do what's going to work for you guys.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
I love that, just around it's got to be sustainable. Quite often, we get sent home with a list of things to do, and you're like, I can't physically fit all of that into our schedule. So yeah. All for sustainability. I wanted to talk a little bit more now about rediscovering our identity as parents and people and a whole person. And I want to come to you now, Helen, and just from your perspective, why is engagement in meaningful activities outside of caregiving so important for parents' mental health and overall well-being?
Well, we're all unique individuals. We were, before we became parents, we still are. And I think maintaining one's self-image, one's identity is just a critical part of, being alive. So whilst we have very high value, like I was talking about high value roles and low value roles, being a mum or a dad, and the caregiving tasks that go with that role for everyone listening, they're high value roles. So we want to hang on to those. But part of our identity is also our talents and what we know about ourselves. Like maybe you're a musical person, so your identity and your feelings about yourself are reinforced through, listening to music, playing music, going to listen to music in a band, and we need that as much as we need physical activity, as much as we need sleep. We probably need it less frequently, but it's part of reinforcing our identity and maintaining our own quality of life. So Pam was talking about Christopher's quality of life. Everyone's quality of life in the family matters. So, we help our children participate in ballet or learn chess or, whatever it is, enjoy the things that they like. It's a whole of family approach, similar to what Pam said. We all have to have interests. We all have to look after our health. We all have to do work, whether it's paid work or not, and we need to distribute that evenly around the family. So, so engaging in meaningful things for yourself actually supports your mental health. We can hear from psychologists that, if we go to psychology sessions and do CBT or we do mindfulness, it supports our mental health. Well, it sure does. But what really supports your mental health is if you're connecting with things that reinforce your identity. I'm an artistic person. I'm a really friendly person, being part of a group. I'm a competitive person. I like doing sport. It maintains our sense of self. It maintains our mental health, and it makes us a more satisfied person. And, I'd say there's a lot of research to say it makes you, a better parent on a daily basis.
Yeah, I agree. Absolutely agree. I might come to you first, Pam, with this question, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on it too, Helen, afterwards. But many parents feel guilty taking time for themselves or pursuing interests unrelated to their child's care. Some people might feel frustrated or angry at times because they can't find the time for themselves. How do you help parents overcome this guilt? Or even for Pam, how did you overcome this guilt, and if there was resentment or frustration, and recognize that your own needs matter too?
I think it was like recognizing that doing something for me is not necessarily selfish. It's necessary. And I think too, getting a better understanding of what self-care means for me as well. Like, it's not like, as much as I would love to spend half a day at a spa every month, like that's not
Wouldn't we all?
sustainable or even possible in any universe. So I think, you know, self-care for me was about being consistent and showing up for myself. So and habit stacking. So I go to the gym most mornings. So leave my family at home sleeping in their beds. It's so hard in winter, but go leave them all sleeping in their beds. And I go and I move my body. So that's one thing that I do for me that like helps me stay sane. And it's really great for my mental health. And then like when I come home, I'm making kids lunches, but I'll make myself a cup of tea and I'm just sitting in the quiet of the house because no one's out of bed yet. And just having that moment for myself, that moment for reflection or meditation or whatever it is while I do different things. It's about, I think, weaving those little rituals into the day just for me. But for me, it also means self-care is also about like preparing for the week. So like writing a menu plan and getting the groceries done so that I know what I'm doing for dinner every night for the week, and having that plan on the fridge so my family know too, because they need predictability. So yeah, just I think being okay with the fact, and it was that mind shift that looking after me and taking that time for me is not selfish, it's necessary so everyone can benefit from it, was massive. So if you can shift your mind into that, like, no, I need to do this for the benefit of my entire family, there's much less guilt. And it's actually, the resentment flips and it's more around like, if you don't get to do those things for yourself, you get frustrated.
So Helen, what would you say to those parents that might be feeling that guilt or that frustration? How would you help them recognize that their own needs matter too?
Well, I love everything Pam said there, and it's all habit formation, embedding things in routines, and getting some of the positive emotion going to outweigh the guilt, to outweigh the frustration. I think that nearly every single parent feels guilt and frustration. People do move into the really angry stage at some point. People feel, and mothers have reported this, for a long time, just very cheesed off, talking about mac and cheesed off that they don't get time for themselves. And you're allowed to get cheesed off. And I like it when people get cheesed off because that motivates you. We've got to, sometimes we need a tipping point to push ourselves into believing that I can change my routine and I can change my prioritization of myself, and that it will actually cause a ripple effect in the family where everyone understands we're all in this together. Everyone matters. Everyone's health matters. For your daughters, Pam, to see you get up in the morning and go to the gym and then be mindful after that is a wonderful gift for them to see, because you're modeling how you want them to take care of themselves. So I think that's just wonderful that you've given us that example. I think people need to be assertive about their needs as well. Not to become resentful and, look sideways at our partner or other, another relative who can find more time for themselves. People will not stop you from self-sacrificing. I think that's a general rule in life. You need to do it for yourself. And I've said before, children say about their mothers, I want my mother to take care of herself. I wanted to take care of, her health, and I wanted to have her friends, and I wanted to have her time for herself. So if you're finding it hard to work out why you would do it, you're doing it for your children as well as yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Pam, you've mentioned to me before that you like to be creative and spend time with friends. How did you begin to reintegrate these aspects of yourself after becoming so immersed in Christopher's care? And like, I mean, I'm sure you started small, but what difference did that make?
It was massive. I'm actually really social. I don't know if you guys know this about me. I like hanging out with people. I like talking. So it was being able to socialize again was like made a huge difference. I think while it was exhausting, getting to the 64 appointments each week was actually a good thing for me because it meant I was out of the house each day and I was interacting with people and all of that kind of things. I think a few of you have heard me speak about Nanny Helen before. She is an absolute angel on earth. And when I was pregnant with Christopher and we were unsure about prognosis and what was going to happen, she started a thing called Friday Fun Days. She would take me out for lunch every Friday and we would go and do something different. And that tradition has continued. Max is antsy because he wants to go and get on with his Friday Fun Day with Nanny today. So it's Friday, Mum, and where's my nanny? So I think that's also been incredibly valuable in terms of making sure that I'm doing something for me and socializing and getting out and about and doing things. In terms of friendship circles, and we were the first in both friendship circles to have babies. So if we are out with friends, they come to us. And it's always been like that. And now that they're all starting to have kids, it's still exactly like that because our house is accommodating for all ages and there's enough room for everyone, and they all just come and we crash them in the back room with a movie after dinner so that we can all sit around and chat. And I think having friendships that are okay to accommodate those things rather than saying, no, we'll only see if we go out to a fancy restaurant or whatever, like having friendships that are happy to come and meet us where we're at was really big. In terms of creative pursuits, sometimes I just needed to take my mind off all of the chaos that was going on in my life. And like, yeah, so the dishes weren't done and the washing is piling up and becoming very overwhelming. But you know what? I'm going to sit here and color, or I'm going to sit here and plan a quilt I'm going to make for my kids, or whatever it might be, because that makes my heart happy and my heart needs to be happy so I can continue caring for my family.
I'd like to see one of your quilts. Helen, we've talked about healthy mothers, healthy families a little bit already in here, but I'd love to hear from you around the research that shows parental well-being directly impacts family function and children's outcomes.
Yes. So I've done a lot of studies on healthy mothers, healthy families, but also just other aspects of family life for families raising children with additional care needs, disability or developmental difference. And so over time, what we found when we studied mothers who came through Healthy Mothers, Healthy Families is that, so we do that longitudinally. So what happens over time for Pam, for other people that are in the research, and I'm not saying Pam was in the research because I really don't know if you were or not, Pam. But so when women sort of redesign their lifestyle around their own health maintenance, their own social connections, delegation of some of the care activities when they can, all those sorts of things, the research shows that mothers are fully capable of becoming empowered, that they do improve their mental health, and that means reducing symptoms of depression and anxiety and stress. They do improve their well-being and their vitality. So that means your energy, instead of just dragging yourself out of bed, people feel like they're a bit more springy out of bed. So it just shows that mothers can manage themselves like they manage their children. They've got the skills, they can apply it to themselves. But what we also know, and I'm just studying this, I'm just looking at this data right now, being a data person, and I just want to say to all the mothers who participate in research, it's so important, because I can't advocate at government level, I can't change the way pediatricians relate to parents, I can't change OT practice or whatever if I haven't got research, and I'm just a researcher and there's hundreds of us. but your perspective is so important in changing things. So if you get the chance to be involved, I just want to encourage you to do it. So what we found out was with mothers is sort of key, the linchpin in the family is that they reported over time that the family cohesion improved. So family cohesion is around communication, but particularly work delegation. So if Pam's doing all the washing and all the dishes and all the bills and all the blah, 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 on top of the mothering and the caring, it's fairly uneven distribution in the family, and there's more likely to be, conflicts and less enjoyment, because if we get an unevenness of distribution of work, we also get an unevenness of distribution of fun, because you're not there. So so this is really important. So we find that mothers, when they do more for themselves and they're feeling better, the family becomes more cohesive. The mother's more assertive at saying, I'm actually going to get a paid worker in for that, or I'm actually going to get my partner to get up for that 2 o'clock, transfer. I'm going to whatever I'm going to do. So mothers become more assertive, more empowered, and more capable of bringing support towards themselves. Listening to Pam, the way Pam is managing medical teams around her child, communicating with others. You've almost got a value statement there, Pam, about your child and their quality of life, and everything else falls into place after that. So taking that into the family, I'm using Pam because Pam's given us her life as an example, and I thank you, Pam, for that today. But managing Pam's lifestyle on a daily basis is changing the family dynamics somewhat. So we find that the quality of life of children improves as well. The more connected mothers are to their communities, to their friends, to supportive others, the more connected children are. Like Pam was saying, people are invited into the home. Your child is interacting with others, so their quality of life goes up as well. So it's really interesting how much power there is in the parenting role in the family. Not to say that if you're not doing well now, and you do not start feeling guilty that you don't have a perfect family, but perhaps there's some conflict and a lack of cohesion, because all families have ups and downs. What we're doing here today is we're learning that change is possible, whether it's healthy mothers, healthy families, whether it's going to your GP and getting a mental health care plan, whether it's going out with your friend, whatever you can do for yourself to improve how you feel, to empower yourself so that you can make these changes, maybe not tomorrow, maybe not next week, but maybe it's next month. This is a direction that is healthy, and it's better for you and for your family. And that's what the research reports. So, yeah.
Which I think kind of brings me into that next question around some of those practical and accessible ways that, time-pressed parents and exhausted parents can actually begin to practice self-care, even when it feels impossible. And I am noticing in the chat as well, there's a few sort of comments around like those single parent families that might not have a lot of support. Like I know Pam does have Tom and Nanny Helen, who are really great support. So for some of those families that, might be in that situation and they're exhausted and they're time pressed and they might not have that support network, how can they begin to sort of practice this self-care that we're talking about and start to find themselves again?
Do you want me to go first, Pam? Or Yeah. So I think it is harder being on your own in the home, but you have people outside of your home and other supportive adults, and so it's really important to bring other supportive adults around you. So maybe it's your time outside of the home that you need to connect with others for support for yourself. Maybe you need to think of ways that others can support you in the home, like, saying yes to help, saying yes to those people in your life who have the time and the willingness to support you. I think that, something I'll just tell you quickly, when I first started studying mothers, which was 20 years ago, I had a big group of about 150 mothers that I interviewed at that time. So this is 20 years ago. And I asked them about whether they relied on themselves more than anyone else or whether they relied on another adult in their life. And I really expected the mothers who put their hand up and said, I rely on myself more than anyone, to have the best mental health. It was the exact opposite. So as a parent, having somebody else in your life as a supportive adult, whether they're your partner or not, doesn't seem to matter. So it might be a parent, your own mother. It might be, a best friend. I don't know who it is in your life. But having the support of another adult is crucial to mental health. So if you're feeling lonely and you're feeling like, I don't have someone and I'm a single parent, spend some time when you're interacting with others, who makes you feel good? Whose humor do you like? Who in your life is someone that brings out the best in you? And start to work to bring more of those people in. And again, it's not something that's going to happen tomorrow. It's going to take a little bit of time. But it's just really important to bring supportive adults towards you, particularly if you're a single parent. Yeah, so I think that's the main message I'd like to relay there.
Yeah, thanks, Helen. Pam, what are some practical, accessible ways for time-pressed and exhausted parents to just start beginning to practice a little bit of self-care when it feels impossible?
I think it's like in the boring, mundane things that when you are incredibly time-pressed and exhausted, it can make the most difference. So rather than trying to find the time to go and have coffee with a friend or trying to find the time to get to the gym or, whatever it is, like I've mentioned meal planning, like it can make a huge difference to your week. It could be, I used to set an alarm for 20 minutes before I used to go and pick the kids up from school to make myself a cup of tea. And it was like not negotiable. When that alarm went off, it didn't matter what I was doing with my day, what we had going on. I would make myself a cup of tea and I would sit. Sometimes I would do a crossword. Sometimes I'd stare into space. Sometimes I would just, I don't know, scroll on my phone, doom scroll, whatever it was. But that was my 20 minutes for the day and that was it. And some days that was all I got for myself, but at least I got a hot cup of tea and 20 minutes to just switch my brain off. But I think it's like the little hacks that you pick up along the way to try and make your life a bit easier, whether it's pre-freezing meals or meal planning or I love that use click and collect, but tell your family you're actually doing the groceries so that you can get an hour to yourself. Because like it takes an hour to do the groceries, right? So why can't you take the hour for yourself, do it click and collect prior, and then go and have a coffee or get your nails done or whatever it is. I know that's not possible for all families, but it's one of my favorites. Yeah, I think you just got to kind of think outside the box a little bit and do a little bit of self-reflection and work out what it is that makes you feel good. Like maybe just sitting with sun on your face is enough for you. So maybe you need to prioritize getting to the park today because then you can sit and you've got sun on your face while your kid is burning energy. So yeah, just like I think it's an element of self-awareness first and foremost to really truly understand what it is that's going to, like that's tiny little thing that's going to make you feel good today. And then just try and shuffle things and get creative so that you can prioritize that.
Yeah, amazing. I think someone was very impressed with your click and collect idea in the chat. That is gold, was the comment. So I guess I was going to ask you this, Pam, but I'm sure, Helen, you've also got some insights on this, but there are common themes that emerge when parents talk about the barriers to caring for themselves. How can we help parents overcome these obstacles? I think a lot of the time it tends to be around support and finding that support to allow that time for themselves. That's what I tend to hear, but have either of you got some insights into that?
I think the supports is definitely up there. I think also the imbalance in the mental load too, whether partnered or not, we tend to carry it all. And I think it just feels a bit heavier when we've got all the extra caring responsibilities that come with our kids, because it's not just a matter of like organizing lunchboxes and getting everyone to school. We've also got appointments, and we've got, you know, equipment and all of these other things that we need to navigate. So I think that that's a big one. And I think that one can definitely be tackled through communication. And I think one of the hardest skills that we as carers need to get good at is asking for and accepting help when it's offered. It can be so uncomfortable and so incredibly hard, but start small and just learn how to do it, because we are not designed to do any of this on our own. And being able to ask for help is an invaluable life skill as a carer, whether it's asking someone to feed the cat because you're stuck at hospital, or putting your hand up and saying, hey, no, I need more support hours because I cannot get through my week without an additional set of hands in my home. Yeah, so I think it's uncomfortable at first. I've never been very good at it. I think I'm only just coming into my asking for help and accepting help phase, and I'm 11 years in. So it can be really difficult for some people.
Yeah.
But I think if I was to encourage you to get good at anything, it would be asking for and accepting help.
Yeah. And I think as well, like, it can also be difficult getting those support hours through the NDIS.
Yeah.
And that can be a challenge in itself. And I think that's what I love about, you know, mapping your connections, particularly as part of the Healthy Mothers, Healthy Families program, like identifying who your supports are, your informal supports, and how you can nurture those relationships. And yeah, I think that's really important as well. I'm coming up to my closing questions, but I did just want to quickly bring Helen back in, because we did just have a question in the chat around, you know, some research into dads. And I know this is something that you've tried to do, but do you want to just talk a little bit more about just the research around dads?
Absolutely, yes. And welcome to any dads who are attending today. Yes, so I've done a bit of research into dads, but I also have a PhD student who is studying dads. And there are a lot of similarities for dads, but there's some big differences. So we know that in you know, it's actually about 95% of families, the mother is the person most knowledgeable and the person providing the most direct care, taking the child to appointments, et cetera, et cetera. So that does not diminish the value, the role of fathers whatsoever, whether they're living with the family or elsewhere. You know, dads are crucial. We know that developmental outcomes for children, you know, it can be different with very involved dads. So we know that when families are affected by child with disability, whether there's one child in the family or two children, that it does affect the father's career. You know, dads make different decisions around, you know, amount of work, where they're working, whether they're going on this career trajectory or another. Dads step up more in a lot of childcare tasks with brothers and sisters, but fathers also report a similar interruption to their social connections to mums. Men generally are better. I've said this before, and I'll say it again, but men are better at leisure than women. Like in Australia, the Australian Bureau of Statistics says that men get 30 more minutes leisure a day than women. So we've got a lot to learn off the males in our lives, our brothers, our partners, our fathers. You know, it's just a really interesting phenomenon. Women take up more of the unpaid work, and that it's just the way it is. So we've got to learn from that. So so the other thing is that for fathers, mental health and physical health is similarly affected as mothers if fathers don't get the time for their own health and well-being. So yeah, so some similarities and some differences there for dads.
Yeah, thanks. I threw that one in. I put you on the spot there, but thanks for sharing that. And if we might be able to share some information in the resource email afterwards. I'm mindful of time. I've got two last questions for you both. So what would you say to a parent who feels like they've completely lost touch with who they were before their child's diagnosis and doesn't even know where to begin finding themselves again? I'll go to you, Helen.
Okay. Well, you will find yourself and you can do it. And attending today, listening today, if you're listening to the recording later, it is really the first step in helping yourself. You can help yourself. I think you've got to think of yourself prior to becoming a parent and the things that you did. What did you do for yourself? Were you into fitness? Were you into, did you go to work early? Were you always a worker? And start to reconstruct, your sense of self and who you are. I think, paying attention to yourself and catching yourself in the enjoyable moments of your day. Like maybe it's, listening to politics. Maybe it's, listening to music. Maybe it's gardening. Find the happy moments and build on those happy moments because they stack to mean part of your identity. And it's just really important to find yourself again. And, you're in there, and also find those people that bring out the best in you and who you enjoy being around, because we're all social beings, and we all want to connect with others. So please don't be isolated. Find your people, find organizations like Belongside. There's many different ones in different states. Find other parents who, know a little bit about the sort of journey that you're on, and, enjoy time with them.
Absolutely. Pam, do you have anything to add on to that?
I think like being mindful and having that self-awareness, like Helen was just talking about, like catch yourself in those moments of joy, and just being aware of what makes you feel good, what makes your heart sing, and lean into them, because that's gonna build on that. And it just has to be tiny.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, last question before I wrap up. If you could leave parents with one essential truth about their value beyond their caregiving role, what would it be? Anyone can jump in there.
I saw a meme the other day that pretty much sums this up, and it was essentially like an illustration of a mother holding a baby to her chest, and the words were, "I'm replaceable everywhere else but here."
Yep.
Helen, anything to add there?
I think that developing your own mantra about how important you are, but also how unique you are, and that we all need to exist outside of our roles as parents. So, treasure that part of yourself and let that part of yourself come out in small ways, because we all need to be something besides a parent, I think, as well, Yeah.
Absolutely. Oh, thank you so much to you both. These conversations are so powerful and necessary. I think like the biggest thing that I take away from particularly sessions like today is that caring for yourself isn't selfish. It's actually one of the most important things that you can do for your child and your entire family. To everyone listening, please know that you're not just a caregiver. You're not just an advocate or a therapy coordinator. You're a whole person with interests, dreams, friendships, and needs that matter. Your child needs you to be well, and the world needs the unique gifts that you can offer. As I mentioned at the beginning, if this conversation has brought up any emotions, please remember to reach out to your support network, your GP, your healthcare professionals. You don't have to navigate this alone. Before we finish, I know that in the chat there has been some links shared. So we have shared a link for expressions of interest for upcoming Healthy Mothers, Healthy Families groups. So we'll also send that out with the resource email. So you'll be notified by email once we've set some dates. Also, we have our final session in this series next Wednesday, where we'll be discussing when the load gets heavy. So We know that the mental load of disability parenting can feel relentless, and it's time we talk honestly about managing the load and finding sustainable ways forward. So we do have two speakers for that. We have Sarah, who is a solo parent, and we also have Attilio from the podcast, Dads Speak. So I'm pretty sure that's also been shared in the chat. We'll share that in the email afterwards. Again, Helen, Pam, thank you so much. Everyone else, until we see you again, please be gentle with yourselves. Remember, you matter, your well-being matters, and taking care of yourself is one of the greatest gifts you can give your child. Have a wonderful Friday. Go and enjoy your Friday fun day, Pam. And Helen,
Yes.
I know you're off on a big trip, so safe travels. And thank you both so much for being here.
Thanks, Pat. Thanks, Bree. Thanks, Pam. Thanks,
Helen.
everyone, for listening.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.